Good evening. The first item on the agenda this evening is appointment of Chair and Vice Chair for 2019-2020. So we'll call first of all for nominations for Chair, which this year is from Croydon Council. Could I call therefore for nominations for Chair?
I would like to nominate Councillor Collins for Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. And if I could take nominations for Vice Chair, which this year is from Kingston Council.
Councillor Gander.
Thank you, Councillor. And can I have a seconder? Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
That's it. Welcome everybody to the meeting, and particularly a member of the public at the back there. I've got apologies from Councillor Byers and apologies for Councillor King for lateness. Are there any other apologies?
Yeah, Councillor Adler sends apologies.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, no declarations of interest on this one. Minutes of the previous meeting of April the 2nd, 2019, they've been actually circulated. Any comments? Okay, can we agree those minutes? Okay, thank you. Okay, if we move then on to item 6, the South London Waste Partnership Contact Management Report. Our officer, sorry, Andrea, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this is the contract management report for the financial year 2018-19. The report covers the performance summary for the 3 Phase A contracts procured by the South London Waste Partnership, as well as the 2012 residual waste treatment contract, also referred to as the ERF contract. Section 2.1 of the report provides a summary of Contract 1, which is operated by Viridor Waste Management, and this includes the bulking and haulage of our material. From the 1st of April until the 3rd of March, this contract also included residual waste disposal to landfill. Total waste handled by Viridor for the reporting period was 208,000 tonnes. 118,000 was handled under Contract 1 and 90,000 was handled under the 2012 residual waste treatment contract. Across the boroughs, there has been a 3.88% reduction in residual waste when we compare this to the previous year. And under Contract 1, this has given boroughs a combined saving of just under £900,000. Section 2.2 of the report covers the performance at our HRRC sites. You can see that customer satisfaction continues to be above the 80% contract target. Round 11 includes the Easter half-term period, and so the increase in visitors has resulted in a small increase in waiting times. However, 84% of customers interviewed still waited less than 5 minutes. So analysis on the site users also suggests that over 100 customers per hour are visiting the sites, so during our busy periods. So in terms of customer satisfaction, we feel the sites are operating effectively. In terms of recycling performance, there has been a drop in recycling rates at all of the CA sites when compared to the previous year, and we've completed an extensive end-of-year review of the tonnages in order to find out what the cause is behind this drop. Analysis has shown some changes in customer behaviour, in particularly with regard to the green waste, in that more of this is being presented at the curbside. The most significant impact is, however, the mattresses and the rigid plastics. We've seen both an increase in the tonnages of this material, and also there are challenges in the recycling market for the off-takers of this material. So the contractor did continue to segregate these 2 materials. It's important that we continue to do that. And had there been viable outlets for these 2 materials, the contractor would have made the 70% recycling target. So they're the challenges we're facing at the HRC. The contractor is looking at a number of ideas to improve recycling at the sites, including a project to separate the soil from the aggregates, which we're hopeful we'll get a result from that in the next couple of months. So I will keep this meeting updated on the progress with that. Contract 3 is our recycling and composting contract, and there's no issues to report on that contract. And finally, with regard to the ERF, the 2012 residual waste contract, the ERF has obviously passed its acceptance tests, and in March, the SLWP moved into full services, which means we now benefit from the full performance management framework. Viridor and Canim continue to undertake the wider takeover tests under the observation of the independent certifier, and they are now forecasting a takeover date of summer 2019. Whilst takeover is later than forecast, there are no technical or process issues to report with the facility. So in summary, for the financial year 2018-19, the borough saved 4.5 million in disposal costs through the original ERF commissioning phase. We saved an additional 2 million in the extended ERF commissioning phase when compared to the previous year. And also a further 900,000 was saved as a result of the waste reduction measures implemented at the curbside. So that brings a total saving of 7.4 million when compared to the previous year. Okay, so the recommendation is to note the contents of the report. Were there any questions?
Okay, have we any questions to Andrea? No? Andrea, I was going to, at the workshop that we just had, I think it's important that we say publicly that we will be having a workshop on reuse shops at the HRCs, and particularly I think that we should be, as the South London Waste Partnership, doing some work around how we get our bulky waste collections, particularly when they're picking up furniture and white goods, to make sure that some of this is reused, so that we're not putting too much into the waste stream. And wherever we can, if we can do a piece of work on that to make sure we're as efficient as possible in creating reuse shops and making sure that we avoid putting white goods, particularly that are reserviceable and reusable, into landfill or elsewhere, is that we do really need to be doing a piece of work on that. So that's just to confirm publicly that we will be doing a workshop on that, and obviously we look forward to that. Any questions to Andrea other than that? Councillor King?
Chair, thank you, and apologies if you covered this in your introduction. It was just in relation to the issues around the market for rigid plastics and mattresses. What are we actually doing with what we've got at the moment if we've got a difficulty in finding someone in the market to take them off our hands?
Okay, so currently the rigid plastics and the mattresses, we continue to segregate them so that we can accurately monitor the tonnages and we can be prepared for when the market does open up. In the interim, it will be processed through our 2012 residual waste treatment contract. So, for example, the mattresses will be shredded and then they'll be thermally treated at the ERF.
And the rigid plastics?
Those as well, those also, yeah.
Okay, is the report noted? Okay, yes, thank you. Right, okay, we move then on to agenda item 7, and John Haynes, South London Waste Partnership report comms. John, just before you start, could you in your contribution just clarify for the record where our recycling goes to, bearing in mind the negative publicity around recyclates going to Malaysia? I think it's important that the public are aware that none of that goes through any of the streams in the South London Waste Partnership. Otherwise, John, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report provides an update on communications and stakeholder engagement activities in relation to Phase A and Phase B, and it focuses, contracts that is, and it focuses on the activity in the 3 months between April and June. Starting off, as you've said, with the Section 1, the destination recycling film. Just for members that are new to the committee, just to sort of bring them up to speed very briefly on what that's about. So this is a film that actually we started talking many months ago about, long before it became a big issue again on the recent BBC documentaries. This was about producing a short sort of 4 or 5 minute film that provides information on exactly where all of our different waste and recycling streams go. So food waste, paper and card, mixed dry recycling and residual waste. So, that film would then be cut down into short 10-second trailers that we would use on social media to run a sort of a paid-for social media campaign to drive traffic to the film. It's a format that's worked very well for us last year with our Plastic Planet campaign, and we got some really good results from that. So we're looking to replicate the format, but obviously with a slightly different topic. The last time we met, I updated the committee and explained that we'd appointed a film production company, Radley Elder, to work with us on that. The script had been approved, the filming had taken place, and it all looked like we'd be ready to share that film with you today, which was the hope. Disappointing that that's not the case. It's taken much longer than expected. We did have quite a lot of third-party footage to acquire from some of the commercial partners that we work with, and getting permission to use some of that film has been more challenging than expected. So that has delayed the film slightly, unfortunately. But I'm pleased to say that in the last few weeks we've made some good progress on that, and I expect the film to be ready in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So I will certainly look forward to showing it to you all at the next committee meeting. As you say, in terms of the reassurance, I mean, we know that we measure in our 3-yearly resident survey, looking at the trust that residents have around the fact that we recycle everything we possibly can, and the trust that they have in that cycle. And we know over the last 9 years or so that trust has been improving. But we do occasionally get these stories that sort of, that they don't scaremonger, because I'm not suggesting that they're not accurate, but they don't paint the picture in the country as a whole. And certainly we're very confident that the off-takers that we use, people like Veolia, for example, only send plastics to European outlets, and as much as possible stays within the UK. For example, milk bottles, all of those go to their facility in Dagenham, which isn't very far away at all. So those high-quality plastics are treated very close to home. So the film will provide really detailed information about exactly where all of those different materials end up, how they're processed, what they're turned into. It's the plastics that is the challenging one. Everything else, the food waste goes to Chertsey, the residual waste goes to Beddington, paper and card goes up to sort of places like North Wales and Kent. That you can easily find markets for all of that. Glass and metal's the same. It's the plastics that's the lower quality plastics that's challenging. But Veolia have produced some reactive statements that we can use if required, just to reassure people that they're very confident about those networks that they've got in place, and the checks and audits that they do to ensure those materials are being handled properly. Moving on to the Phase A contract, Section 3 of the report looks at the HRCs. Just a couple of quick updates there. 3.1 just makes the point that we've been, during April, promoting the garden waste collection service at the site. So obviously the people that are bringing their garden waste to the HRCs are a good target audience to promote the collection service to them, because it avoids a potential trip for them. So that's a good bit of joined up work between the different contracts. And also the customer satisfaction surveys continue to operate, as Andrea's outlined, and the results, the reports of those surveys are still published on the SLWP website, so they're there for residents to download and have a look at. Moving on to Section 4 and the Beddington landfill operations. Viridor will be holding an open day on Thursday, which has been quite widely publicised. And I spoke to them earlier today, and they've got 37 registered and a further 50 people who have expressed an interest, which is a really great response. So it looks like they're going to be over capacity. So they've said that they will plan to put on a further open day in July to cope with the demand. So that's really good news. And those tours will focus on the restoration work that's going on to turn the old landfill site into a conservation area. They've also produced a Beddington Farmlands restoration roadmap, which is attached to your report as an appendix. And underneath each of this page kind of summarises the whole restoration programme on one side of A4, but then sitting underneath this there are more detailed maps for each of those different road journeys, as it were. So they've been published in various places on the Viridor website, and they will also be put up in the bird hides, which are being installed along the western boundary of the site. So that will contain lots of information about the restoration work going on the site. Those bird hides will be accessible once the permissive footpath is reopened, which I believe will be next month. So lots of good work going on there, and I think we're really sort of pushing Viridor to up the ante a bit in terms of how they communicate and engage with residents about the restoration work that's taking place on the site, because I know there's a lot of interest from members of the public. Looking at Phase B, Section 5, and the energy recovery facility in particular, lots of work going on there as well. Section 6, in fact, paragraph 6.1, just a reminder about the virtual visitor centre, which is live. I went to Sutton to give a demo of that to Sutton members. Very happy to do likewise for any other councils that feel that would be helpful. The current focus with the virtual visitor centre is to complement the photographs that are currently there with videos. So as soon as takeover is complete and Viridor are happy that the facility has been taken over from their perspective, those videos will be produced and added to the site. They continue to upload the emissions monitoring reports on a twice monthly basis. The latest report in May showed that there were no exceedances of the emissions limit value during that month. Construction on the education centre is nearing completion, and over the next couple of months I'll be overseeing that and working with Viridor to make sure that that's fit for purpose and ready to welcome people in as soon as it possibly can. The newsletter will go out, as I've mentioned before, to coincide with takeover. An important point, 6.6, we did publish a statement on the South London Waste Partnership website, just clarifying the fact that the Beddington ERF is not permitted to accept or treat radioactive waste. There were some rumours going around that that may not be the case, but we moved quickly just to provide absolute clarity about that the facility does not receive or treat radioactive waste. And the liaison groups continue to meet on a regular basis, and I continue to attend those on behalf of the partnership. And then the final update, Section 7, the social research study. So we conduct social research every 3 years. We have done for the last 10 years. And we're now due to commission our 4th survey. At the last meeting of the committee, I was given the nod to go ahead and commission that work. So all of the tender documents went out to 6 specialist research companies. The deadline for submissions is actually tomorrow. So we're looking to award the contract by the end of this month for the surveys to take place from mid to late July, and hopefully the findings report will be available by the end of August. And that survey provides us with really valuable insight into the views and opinions of local people in relation to a wide range of waste management issues. And just one final quick update that was not in the report, because this has happened since this was drafted, but the boroughs have submitted a funding bid to LWARB for some funding to run some food waste awareness activity in October. We're looking to get up to £26,000 to run a whole series of road shows and promotional activities in October to complement the other work we'll be doing.
Okay, yeah, thank you for a very comprehensive report and the welcome confirmation around radioactive waste. Any questions to John? Yeah, Councillor Ben Andrew.
Hi, John. So 2 points to raise. First of all, I'm now in Sutton a lead member for overseeing Beddington farmlands and the restoration process. I think it's important to note, to acknowledge this document and say, yeah, there is some information there and that's helpful, but also to acknowledge what it lacks. And from my perspective, it needs to have a lot more, I think, to really give us the assurances we need, because, it's one thing to produce a bunch of items which you need to tick off before you've reached the restoration. But what I've been pushing them for, and I'd like to have as much sort of backup as possible, is to push them on sort of dates. I want a Gantt chart from them. And I've used the word Gantt chart to them more times than I thought I'd ever use the word Gantt chart. But I need to see, you do this, then you do this, then you do this, and it leads to there. Because when you just write a list of actions that need to happen, it doesn't demonstrate the complexities that I know are there. And when I've had meetings with them and they're not as on top of it as they should be, they're not. So we need to acknowledge that, I think. I think we need to think of it as a very important part of their responsibilities and not as something that they can sort of ply us off with a very nice looking map. I think we need to be a bit sort of clear-eyed about how firm we have to be with them, because this isn't their interest. It's not the number one thing on their mind. I think if we let them slack on it, they will. So that's my sort of my I guess my bugbear from my Bennington farmers' perspective. I'll let you comment on that before I ask the next thing, if you want.
Thank you. Yeah, very happy to support you on that. I work with Andrew Turner a lot, who I think you've met recently, and had a tour of the site. And he was very clear that was an important priority for you. So that's fantastic. And I think, yeah, absolutely. The more clarity we can bring for residents, the better. I think this roadmap and the more detailed roadmaps that sit beneath the overview one that's appended here is a good start. But yeah, I agree. I think some more detail would be great. So very happy to support you with that.
And yeah, just to clarify, the key word is dates. I need dates. But anyway, all right. So on to the other point is about more on the comms. It's more of a suggestion. I think lots of the comms around emissions that we had a chat about before, I think is really, really great. And the virtual visitor centre is fantastic. And I love all the comms work there. So I just want to put on record, I'm so happy with that. I think it's fantastic. Just one other angle I think might also be useful is to really do comms around, really focused on the energy from waste part of it. The fact that obviously in Sutton it's helping to power SDEN and you know the potential that exists there, because that takes us away from rebutting negative for comms and brings us towards, you know, this is a positive thing. And I'm very happy we have this facility here, not just because it isn't dangerous, but because it actually provides positive, beneficial things. I think that's another angle. If there's any chance to do any sort of comms thinking around positive selling around the energy side for SDEN in Sutton and Hackbridge and other similar schemes, that would be really, really great as well. But yeah, very, very happy with all the comms. It looks fab.
Thank you for that. I think it's a good site as well, and I think it represents the most sort of open and transparent approaches that I'm aware of anywhere in the country in terms of things like emissions data. So I think it's a really good step forward. The point you raised about energy is a really interesting one. The last time we did the resident survey 3 years ago, we know that when we asked people about energy recovery facilities and what the benefits were of those, they tend to talk about energy production before they start talking about as an alternative to landfill. So it's very interesting. So residents really, members of the public really understand that and really get that and see it as a better source of energy than using fossil fuels, for example. So it will be very interesting to see when we ask the same question again this year, how that's changed over time and whether the messages are getting through. But yeah, I think it's a message I agree that we could really focus on.
Yeah, and all I'd say is that in theory, you know, it should be put alongside sort of a windmill, as sort of heralded as a way of using a natural process or a naturalist process to produce energy. And I think there's a big comms gap between a windmill and the ERF, and that's just something I thought would be interesting to explore. But yeah, thanks very much.
Right, any other questions to John? Okay, and John, could I just have some clarification regarding the emissions issue? When we had a couple of incidents where we exceeded our stringent target that we set, and I know that obviously through our comms we actually commented on that on the site, but also as well, is there, we discussed before what useful comparators there are, so that the public are aware in terms of if there were an emission overload on our target, what that's comparable nationally, but obviously most importantly, have we got anything from an independent source that we could either put up on the website or you might want to comment on now?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. As I said, the latest emissions report that's been put up was for May. There were no exceedances on the emissions limit values during that month across any of the 7 emissions that are monitored. Prior to that, there have been 2 exceedances of carbon monoxide. one in March and one in April. The first one in March was as a direct result of one of the commissioning tests that Viridor were carrying out at the time. So it was a slightly unusual one, and it's one that you wouldn't expect to see under sort of normal operating conditions. The one in April was a fairly more sort of common exceedance in that it was it only just tipped over the emissions limit value for the half-hourly limit, and it was only by a very small amount, and that was caused by an inhomogeneous type of waste, tricky one to say, and that was directly following a period where the plant had been shut down, so the waste going through was just not quite mixed in the normal way. But generally speaking, I think, so in terms of carbon monoxide, yes, two short-term exceedances so far, and those will have been reported to the Environment Agency, as the permit requires Viridor to do. I think it's also important just to say, particularly on the carbon monoxide front, that the facility is running, generally speaking, running well within its limit, only around 5%, in fact, of its daily limit. So, these very occasional and short-lived exceedances are set against the context of a very well-performing facility in that regard. In terms of providing some comparators, I mean, all that information now is available on the Virtual Visitor Centre, so I think hopefully that provides everyone with reassurance that they can go on there and check and look for themselves at that information. But I think you're right. I think that the data's useful and interesting, but we need to try and put it in a wider context. So I have been doing some work on that. At a national level, I've been working with the UK National Atmospheric Emissions Inventory, which is the government-funded inventory for national emissions data, and they provide estimates of emissions across all different emission sources. And there are some useful figures that have come out of there. I'll give you just a few examples if you like. One of them is around bonfire night celebrations that take place on and around the 5th of November. The emissions inventory estimates that those celebrations release 10 times more dioxins into the atmosphere than all of the UK's energy from waste plants do during an entire year, and there's about 40 plants across the country. In terms of nitrogen oxide, a third of the UK's nitrogen oxide emissions are produced by us driving our cars, vans and lorries. In comparison, all of the UK's energy from waste facilities combined only produce 1.2% of NOx emissions, dealing with all of our non-recyclable rubbish. And finally, in terms of particulate matter, domestic wood-burning stoves and open fires produce 570 times more particulate emissions each year than all the UK's energy from waste plants combined. Now, these are only estimates, but they're very informed estimates from the sort of one of the most robust sources in the country. So, I think that provides a really important national context to energy from waste facilities as a whole. I think the next stage is to look at commissioning some work that specifically looks at the Beddington site and the emissions coming out of the Beddington facility, and to put those into that same context as well, just to help give people the full picture.
Can I thank you for that's a really thorough piece of work. So thank you for looking into that for us, John. It took me by surprise there. Any other questions to John? Okay, moving is the report agreed and noted. Thank you very much. Moving on to the South London Waste Partnerships budget update, item 9, Michael McKee.
Good evening. Yes, the first paper is the 2018-19 budget outturn, and this paper provides the outturn position for the partnership for the last financial year. The final outturn position for the year was for a £32,880 underspend, which is an increase over the position reported to the 2nd of April committee. The difference between month 11 and outturn was purely down to it's based on actuals rather than rounding up or down, and because of the de minimis levels at year-end accruals. So the main variances are explained in paragraphs 2.3 and 2.4, and the recommendation is to note the content of the report. If there's any questions.
Okay, you've got item 9 as well, so any questions on item 8? Okay, no. Item 9.
Item
Sorry,
9,
is
yep.
item 8 agreed?
Yep.
Agreed, yeah. Item 9. Thank you, Michael.
Yep, item 9, this paper provides an update on the partnership's budget position at month 2 to the end of May of the financial year and the projected outturn for the 2019-20 financial year. The outturn position for the year at month 2 is estimated at £30,000 underspend, and this is due to the new post of Waste Strategy Officer, which was agreed as part of the 2019-20 budget process, being vacant, and the forecast assumes this post will not be filled until 1st of October 2019. Other than that, everything is going as to plan. The recommendation is to note the contents of the report.
Any questions to Michael? Okay, is the report noted? Thank you. Okay, the item 10, South London Waste Management Group, Annie Baker.
Thank you, Chair. So this report summarises the risks that are managed through our Joint Waste Committee South London Waste Partnership Risk Register, summarising key risks that we're facing currently. The first 2 risks covered in the report under 2.2 and 2.3 have been reported previously to the committee, and these are around the changes in the recycling materials markets, and the report details the efforts that we're taking to both preserve the quality of the material and reduce contamination so that we've got the best quality product we can, and also details the potential impact of those financial markets having an impact on our contractors, and so that's another risk that we're monitoring very carefully. In paragraph 2.4, we describe the DEFRA strategy consultation, which we flagged up at the last committee meeting. The partnership coordinated a response to all of the consultations run by the government in May. Those were 3 consultations from DEFRA on reforming packaging producer responsibility regulations, introducing deposit return schemes, and potentially accelerating consistency in recycling schemes across the country. And the Treasury ran a consultation on plastic packaging tax as well. We considered the proposals carefully and submitted partnership responses, and we'll be tracking the potential impact of the measures that the governments are proposing in their environment strategy carefully. Paragraph 2.5 mentions the risks around Brexit. Obviously, we potentially still face issues with export markets and so on as we head towards October. We're in a fortunate position because our residual waste is managed within the partnership area, so we're not reliant on any export at all. It's possible that any difficulties around the ports have an impact on recycling across the UK, but that's something we're monitoring very closely with our contractors to avoid being impacted. The recommendation is that the committee notes the report.
Thank you, Annie. Any questions to Annie? Okay, I think it's really good that we've actually looked at the impact of Brexit, because particularly if we do have to at some stage export to Europe, it could cause issues. So that's good. Okay, can we agree the report? Okay, thanks very much. So thank you everybody for attending, and a member of the public for attending as well. That concludes the meeting. Thank you very much.